Hello and welcome to Fierce. This program celebrates the diversity of LGBTIQ identities and perspectives. Fierce is produced in Bundjalung country at 2NCR Lismore and can also be heard on podcast at fiercefm.podbean.com and in New Zealand on Fresh FM, as well as all over Australia through the Community Radio Network. This is Peter Lena, and I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands where you are listening. They took care of these lands sustainably for hundreds of thousands of years and then shared this land with us at great cost to their own lives. I want to honour and thank them for the work they have done and continue to do to care for country and to sit on the earth. I also want to thank the fairies and crones who came before us in history to fight for our human rights, to love fiercely. Fierce. We have an exciting show with some amazing people to talk to, including Tobin Saunders from Acon, New South Wales, who is the Community Health Promotions Officer. Just recently, you've been doing community consultations to explore the GBTIQ domestic violence and sexual assault. We're going to be chatting about that because there's a big launch happening in Lismore and Sydney. Hi, Tobin.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am not too bad, thank you very much, for a chilly evening.
So tell us a little bit about this launch that's happening.
Acon, in conjunction with Western Sydney University, undertook some research. The paper is called Sorting It Out, and it's gay, bisexual, transgender, intersex and queer men's attitudes and experiences of intimate partner violence and sexual assault. So it's really important research. This forum will be a chance for people to ask some questions and explore the research. So there'll be catering, there will be a panel, myself as the glamorous host, and it's just a real opportunity to unpack some of the key findings from this Sorting It Out research with some incredible entertainment, I hear.
That'd be me.
Yes, I think it's really important that we engage with our communities around studies and research, so our community are aware of what's happening in our communities, feel engaged in that research and these studies, but also it's a chance for people to unpack some of these issues around domestic violence and sexual assault amongst men in all their variety, which often we don't talk about, so I think it's a really good opportunity.
And do you have any of the stats available to share now?
Yeah, look, I think about 900 GBTIQ men over the age of 18 were involved in the study. It's called Sorting It Out. People can find that online if they just type that in. They say that almost 2/3 of men indicated that they'd been in an unhealthy or an abusive relationship in the past. So that's a lot. That's 66%. And that younger men were more likely than older men to report incidents of abuse within the last 4 years. Men who had experienced abuse from a partner were more likely to binge drink more frequently and had higher levels of drug taking than men who did not report any partner abuse. So that sort of fits into that trauma. If we're experiencing trauma or abuse either within our relationships or in other environments, that's often can be a trigger for other issues in our lives. What else have we got here? 51% of respondents agreed that sexual coercion and pressure are common amongst GBTIQ men, and nearly 3/4 of respondents said they have a male GBTIQ friend who has been in an abusive relationship. So they're pretty stark stats. But there's also lots of anecdotal stories in this study. It's very thorough. It's a really good chance for people to get an idea of what other people have been experiencing. And then hopefully we'll be able to raise awareness about this so that people feel more comfortable and that we have a culturally safe environment for people to report any violence or assault in their relationship, but also to help people seek support and prevent that and have healthy, safe conversations with their partners.
It might be a bit taboo that people aren't talking about it, but certainly the statistics are telling us that most people can relate to it and have been in it themselves, or certainly know people who have been in it. Silence is not necessarily the healthiest way to deal with stuff, so it's good to be speaking out. And good on you, Rob.
A lot of people just think it's always black eye and that's it, but there's all sorts. If you have a look on our Facebook page, the tile images, does your partner read your SMS texts? You know what I mean? Like, so people just interfering in your privacy and sort of not trusting you. And, there can be all sorts of discrete behaviours that most people might just go, oh, he's just being a bit of a dick. But it's like, no, that's actually an unhealthy relationship.
Yes.
So, yeah, the discreet stuff's often the most insidious because it doesn't get flagged and then it becomes the norm and people are in these lopsided relationships.
Yeah. And I guess if someone's doing that, the trust is already wrong with the relationship, isn't it?
That's it.
And communication is key. Rather than looking at someone's phone, just communicate, I suppose. Is that
That's it. Acon Northern Rivers provides free counselling. So we have a psychologist and a substance support counsellor. So if the forum or the contents or this study brings up any issues for people, we have free and confidential counsel and support for people. Our number 66221555 if they had any more questions about it.
Well, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on Fierce again, Tobin, to share this information.
That's fine, and thank you so much. We really appreciate you promoting this because whilst it's not exactly, a topic that people feel necessarily comfortable about, I think this is a really great chance for the community to come together and have a yarn, have a nibble, hear some beautiful music from you and ask any questions.
Well, thank you so much, Acon Northern Rivers, and thank you, Tobin Saunders. You guys are fierce.
Thank you so much and have a great evening.
So we'll see you all there. It's going to be free food and plus you get a $50 voucher for your time. It's on Wednesday, September 11 at 5:30 p.m. at Flock Espresso Eats, Woodluck Street in Lismore. It's open to all gay, bisexual, transgender and queer men who have sex with men. Well, someone told me yesterday that when you throw your love away, I act as if I just don't care, yeah. I look as if I'm going somewhere, but I just can't convince myself I couldn't live with no one else. And I can only play the part and sit and nurse my broken heart. So lonely, 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 so lonely. Now no one's knocked upon my door for 1,000 years or more, all made up with no place to go. Welcome to my one-man show. So lonely, so lonely, so lonely, so lonely. I'll never be a beast of burden. Walk for miles, honey, my feet are hurting. All I want is for you to make love to me. What's the matter with me?
Hi everybody, I'm Lacey Dunaman.
Hi everybody, I'm Felicia Fox.
Hi everyone, it's Shaniqua, your Miss First Nation 2018 Top 3, and you're listening to
Fierce
FM. Fierce!
Right now on the phone we have Marie Reilly, who's a feminist queer activist. Welcome to Fierce, Marie.
Hi Peter, and hello to all you Fierce radio listeners.
Well, we're just going to chat tonight about Euricity murder and rape in Melbourne and our community response to that.
Yes, it's been quite big, like personally and on a community level. It's stirred up a lot of emotion for me and for many people. And I think it's, it's really caught a place in public discussion around it, which is, really important, but also really interesting, some of how that response is unfolding.
Yeah, and it's hard to know why this particular murder, when there's 30 happened this year, and they happen a lot, these rapes and murders.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know why it's happening now, but perhaps it's partly to do with the Me Too movement and the timing.
Yeah, I think it's such an important thing, and I think I see it sort of two sides of it. I think these, really high profile or trending on Facebook, if you will, moments in time that really capture us and move us and inspire us to action or commentary are so important for social change and raising awareness. But I think, we can't stop there without thinking about the rapes and the murders that aren't trending on Facebook, and why is that, and where are the vigils for these people as well. There's been a really interesting discussion coming out of Eurocity's tragic rape and murder around victim blaming and getting derailed basically by victim blaming rather than focusing on what you said before, Peter, around this cultural change that needs to happen around misogyny and gender inequality. And, there's been some high-profile people talking about this, including Lisa Wilkinson on The Project on telly. And I don't watch telly myself, but I went back and looked at that clip, and I thought she made some really, really important points. And then the irony is if you Google Lisa Wilkinson today, she doesn't even come up. Some man, undermining her for what she spoke up about comes up. So I think it's, very ironically really drives home that point about victim blaming and privilege and power and where this discussion is going. And I think it gives us a really important opportunity to stop and think about that and think about how we can move from victim blaming to real cultural change.
And gender equality, because there was young men being punched and murdered in the King's Cross, I think it was, and the lockout laws went into place because it was young men. But for when it's a young woman who's raped and murdered, they just go into victim blaming.
That's right.
Nothing
Women
changes.
should take more responsibility for our personal security rather than men need to stop raping and murdering women. So it's the fact that there can be these legal and these big structures changed to keep men safe, but we only return to blaming victims when it's a matter of women getting raped and murdered. I think just speaks to the fact that this is a whole cultural issue around gender inequality. I was thinking about this question when you asked me to come on radio, Peter, and I really came back to how we can make this change. And it starts on an individual level, and it certainly starts with self-awareness and awareness of privilege in society. Like we're talking here about gender inequality, and then the violent end of that, which is what has happened to this woman Eurocity and being raped and murdered. And I think, but there's a whole spectrum of inequality that happens to get to this point and the social reactions to this point, and it comes back to an awareness of privilege and how power operates in our community and in society. Like for myself, I'm white-skinned, educated, able-bodied. I've got heaps of legal and economic privilege simply based on the country I was born in. But I also am a woman and a queer woman. And so I see inequality, and I am concerned for my safety, the safety of my 21-year-old daughter who also lives in a big city. And that's just a daily reality for me. And so that self-awareness, not only of where power is situated in community and how violence operates and sustains that power, but also the privilege that I have in understanding both sides of that conversation. And that leads me to the second step, and that's also an individual response, but it comes to taking personal responsibility for that and talking to peers. So women talking to women, of course, as we always do, about our safety, about our empowerment, but it's really going to take men talking to men. men talking to men and developing an awareness of that privilege that keeps operating gender equality. And gender equality is not the only way that privilege operates, as we know. Privilege also operates through the color of your skin, through your sexuality, through lots of ways in which you are located in society, which leads you to being in a privileged position of entitlement, or in a disempowered position where you actually are the one who gets blamed for the violence that you experience. So I think there's some really powerful steps that need to happen on an individual level, and like through self-awareness and through educating yourself and talking to others. And when we're talking gender inequality, this can't happen without men talking to men. And of course, parents having an awareness, and teachers and everyone who holds influence in society talking to young boys and young girls and stripping away those messages that build gender inequality. But it's obviously not enough for the individual to change, because we need whole social structures and our culture to change. And so it takes disrupting gender inequality when we see it. So it means sexist, racist, transphobic language and jokes. It's actually calling them out or creating an awareness around what is exclusive or abusive about that language. And I was thinking about my partner is transgender, and the work that I do. I've had a real privilege to meet and be friends with a number of trans individuals, and it's really highlighted something very interesting around gender inequality and sexism. I've got trans guy friends that said they noticed this stark difference from when they identified and were read as a woman, yes, to when they were read as a man. When they were read as a man in society, straight men talked to them, asked their opinions, asked them first in a group of people where the other people were women. So really interesting, and it was quite stark. So these things that operate on what seems a subtle level, when we hold this privilege, or when we're just used to not being asked first our opinion about something, to that change that happens. So I think that, I really appreciate friends that have shared this experience with me, because I think it's been quite enlightening in terms of highlighting how gender inequality operates. But I've also met and know a number of trans women who experience so much discrimination and violence that gender inequality, have a lot to say and a lot to teach people about gender inequality as well, because it's not only the sexism but the transphobia that I've heard people talk about their experience. So I certainly don't want to talk on behalf of anyone else. I really want to empower people to really think about their own position and to really act from that space, because that's really the most empowering place that we can. And that's how we can start to make cultural change, by consciously being an ally. If as a white-skinned person, when someone starts talking to me about racism, I feel uncomfortable. And my sense of entitlement is disrupted. And I need to take the personal responsibility to listen and respond to that in a way which is consciously being an ally. And I just draw that, if I can, that alignment between myself taking personal responsibility for racism and what we need to see in our community is men taking responsibility for not only gender inequality but also violence against women. That's, I really appreciate the time to think through that question you asked, Peter, about moving from victim blaming to cultural change. And I think we have a lot of work to do as a community, but I also feel so excited about this community that we live in and the powerful place this is for change, because there are so many incredible alternative thinkers and people who are just so active in social justice and social change. So I'm big call out to Phil Blackman and the Enacting the Peaceful Man movement that he has initiated. I feel so moved and inspired by this action because it is what needs to change. I mean, women will continue to stand up and speak out and work together for gender equality, but we need to do this together, and the Enacting the Peaceful Man movement is exactly what needs to happen. So I look forward to being there on Sunday, and that's a shout out to all the people in our community and all the men in our community to think about what they can contribute to this space.
Sometimes when we say, or when I hear people saying men need to stop raping and killing women, and then we get the response of not all men, getting defensive and stuff like that. And I don't know whether it's useful to start saying something like men need to learn about gender equality. Men need to, rather than go all the way to the obvious, but as well as that, it creates that defensiveness.
Yeah, and it's that I feel uncomfortable. Well, my analysis is I feel uncomfortable about this statement you're making because it challenges my privilege. And I think if I can either disrupt and derail what you're saying by making a response like that, which, like you said, is obvious. Of course, not all men rape. Yeah. Or I can be an ally and I can listen to you. Yes. And then I can align with making change around gender equality and, creating a masculine culture which respects women and treats everyone equally.
Yes, and we're going to do it. We're going to do it here in the Northern Rivers.
Where you choose to put your energy and why you do that. Some people go, well, not all men rape, or I don't rape. Yeah. It's just like, oh, you're making an excuse and a defense rather than being an ally and making change.
Yeah, and listening and then trying to implement things that we're hearing from your perspective.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Marie. Really appreciate you coming on Fierce and sharing your ideas and educating us. We really appreciate it.
It's a privilege to be here, and it's a privilege to talk to you on the radio, Peter. Thank you so much, and thank you for speaking out on this issue too. This is us enacting change.
I was born by the river in a little tent. Like the river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. 'Cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it is. Then I go to my brother. And I say, brother, help me please. But he wind up knocking back down on the knee. Oh, there been times that I thought I know change gonna come. Oh, yes it is, yes it is, yes it is. Said I know that a change is gonna come one day. I know a change gonna come. Yes it is. I know. Said life can be hard. Oh yeah. And times can get rough. But still I know.
Hello listeners, we are Kelly, Megan and Fox from Sugarshine Feminist Animal Rescue Mission, and we need your help. We care for over 70 rescued and rehomed farmed animals, including pigs, goats, cows, sheep, chickens, lots of noisy roosters and a duck named Elvis. We have massive bills at the moment, so we're reaching out to our local community for help. Check out our Facebook page for lots of stories about the animals and a link to our fundraising site. Thank you from all the humans and all the animals at Sugarshine.
Thank you for listening to Fierce. This program celebrates the diversity of LGBTIQ identities and perspectives. Fierce is produced in Bundjalung Country at 2NCR Lismore and can also be heard on podcast at fiercefm.podbean.com and in New Zealand on Fresh FM, as well as all over Australia through the Community Radio Network.